objectives. Shown here are the objectives for this specific session on oxygen transport. So the first thing I want to do is just go through some of the values. Again, these should be important in understanding what these values are, just the nomenclature and what a normal physiological value is. Again, P big A is alveoli. The partial pressure of oxygen should be 100 millimeters of mercury. P little a is arterial. And again, practically for all practical purposes, the partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood is really the same as what's in the alveoli. The reason for that is if you reach equilibrium, you're the same across this tube. But do keep in mind, we do have a small amount of shunting, which depresses slightly the arterial blood relative to the alveolar. But again, for all practical purposes, normal clinical values for both of these are expected to be about 100 millimeters of mercury. The PVO2 is the partial pressure of oxygen in venous blood, and we talked about how that's 40. For CO2, on the other hand, the P venous CO2, amount of CO2 in venous blood is 46. The alveolar and the arterial are both 40. So CO2 is less, least amount is in arterial blood as it's generated in the tissue by the consumption of oxygen. Or in some cases in anaerobic conditions, that's produced by the tissues. It's a metabolic byproduct of cellular metabolism. So we actually see higher amounts in the venous blood at 46 millimeters of mercury. So with respect to oxygen, how it's transported in the blood is two principal forms. It's soluble versus hemoglobin bound. And so we're going to spend the first session here kind of talking about the soluble aspect. And again, it's dissolved either in the blood as a gas. In other words, it's going to have a partial pressure to it in millimeters of mercury, where it's going to be bound to hemoglobin within the red blood cell. In that case, once it's removed from solution, bound to hemoglobin, the partial pressure that it was exerting is lost at that point in time because it's removed from its gas form and it's been taken out of the solution. So what this cartoon here on the left illustrates is a beaker that kind of shows the to some extent what we'd expect to see with the lungs and blood and red blood cells. So oxygen molecules are coming from the atmosphere. They have to go into the blood, the plasma at a certain solubility and concentration, and once it gets in, it can go in and bind hemoglobin. And so we see both oxygen that exists here in the plasma itself, which this exerts the partial pressure, and then most of the oxygen is going to be here within the red blood cell bound to hemoglobin. And it turns out the total amount of oxygen and the content, the oxygen content as it's formally said to be, really is going to be the sum then of dissolved as well as hemoglobin bound. And so the question is, what is the total content of arterial oxygen? And so how we look at that is to really look at the two sums of these. And so as it turns out, again, we've seen this graph before. So here is showing the total amount of oxygen, and here's the O2 content, mLs of oxygen per deciliter of blood. You can remember that a deciliter is 100 milliliters. And at a normal physiological PaO2, which should be for all of us at sea level breathing room air, which is 21% oxygen, the alveolar and arterial PaO2 should be 100 millimeters of mercury. And if we come up here to this point, our content is about 20 milliliters of oxygen per deciliter of blood. As it turns out, it's about 19.7 coming from hemoglobin bound and about 0.3, which is coming from the dissolved form. So overall, what becomes an important number to remember is that the average of the normal oxygen content in arterial blood is 20 milliliters of oxygen per deciliter of blood. And then the breakdown of that is approximately 19.7 coming from the hemoglobin and 0.3 coming from the soluble. So again, obviously the vast majority is coming from the hemoglobin bound, but again, this is the overall contribution that gives rise to our normal physiological levels of 20. Again, is here in graph form, the small number of dissolved down here plus the hemoglobin bound equals your total. And again, these are the numbers that give rise to the 20 shown there. So we're going to focus on dissolved a little bit. So the question is how much dissolved oxygen is in the blood, again, to kind of continue to understand how much there is, why it's there, and whether it's useful for us. So we talked about Henry's law previously, and so Henry's law states the concentration of a dissolved gas is the solubility of that gas in a liquid times the delta P at that moment in time. So the solubility, this is a constant for oxygen, is 0.003 mLs of oxygen per millimeter of mercury per deciliter of blood. And if we plug these numbers in, then it's from blood, so the amount of oxygen, this is going to be the solubility is 0.003. 100 millimeters of mercury, this is our partial pressure that exists essentially in the plasma. This is our PaO2. So we're trying to figure out, again, how much oxygen will actually physically be dissolved in there. It depends on what that partial pressure is in the plasma. And so in this case, it's 100 millimeters of mercury. And so this is our plasma value then per deciliter of blood. So we multiply these numbers out, we get 0.3 mLs per deciliter. And this is exactly the same number we just calculated on the previous slide. Again, for the soluble is 0.3 mLs per deciliter of blood. And again, just showing that. And then all we're going to say, what happens if we scale this up from 100 mLs up to a liter, everything gets multiplied by 10. So it now becomes simply 3 mLs of oxygen per liter of blood. Again, the only difference from this line to this line is going from 100 mLs to a liter, and again, just multiplying by 10. So we now ask the question, if we have a normal cardiac output, it could be anywhere from 5 to 6 liters per minute, depending on the textbook. I'm just using 5 here in this instance. If we say it's 5 liters per minute, therefore, the amount of dissolved oxygen delivered to the tissues each minute is the content, which is 3 mLs of oxygen per liter, times 5 liters per minute, equals 15 mLs of oxygen per minute. And again, this is the dissolved form. This is in the gas form. So 15 mLs of oxygen per minute is being delivered to the tissues. So the question is, how much oxygen do we consume each minute? And so the answer is about 250. So 250 mLs of oxygen per minute is what we're consuming. So under normal circumstances, we have 15 going out, but we're consuming 250, and which is not even 10% of basically what we have to consume. And so the question is, how do we address this disparity? Kind of how do we explain this? And so the answer is really with hemoglobin. So hemoglobin, from the initial first figure showing the curve, again, hemoglobin clearly provides the vast majority of the oxygen that we will utilize within our system. And so what's interesting with hemoglobin is it's a polypeptide protein, and there's 4 different chains. So there's 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chains, and so they're shown here as a red and orange, a green and a blue. So there's 4 different again chains that are bound together, and they form hemoglobin. What's also important is each one of these chains has the heme group in the center, shown here in yellow. There's a heme group. There's another one, this one here, and that one. So each chain has a heme group, and the heme group is what binds molecular oxygen. So that's shown over here in panel B. So this is the actual heme group, and what becomes important is iron. Iron is what's actually binding the molecular oxygen shown here. And so the iron is positioned in the center of the heme group, and again is critical for binding molecular oxygen. It becomes important enough that if we want to have a normal oxygen content, iron in our diet is critical. So some people become anemic because of iron deficiency. And so again, it's important to make sure that we get enough iron in our diet or through nutritional means to be able to make sure that we can appropriately bind our oxygen. So as it turns out, one heme group will again bind molecular O2. As it turns out, since we have 4 polypeptide chains, as it turns out, one hemoglobin molecule that exists of all 4 of these chains, and in reality it can bind 4 O2 groups. It's a one hemoglobin is binding 4 molecular oxygens, again in the form of O2. So you can have an O2 bound in this one, another O2 bound here, a third O2 bound here, and then a 4th O2 bound here. So again, that's the overall capacity of what hemoglobin can carry. So just to summarize, iron does bind molecular oxygen with a 1-to-1 stoichiometry, and that's shown at this point. And what's interesting kind of biochemically, when the partial pressure of oxygen is high, such as 100 millimeters of mercury is in the arterial blood, oxygen combines with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin, and this is called the relaxed state. So the conformation of hemoglobin changes dependent upon the partial pressure. And when it senses that the partial pressure is high, such as the lungs, it basically will add on and bind up hemoglobin, which is what we need it to do in the lungs, is to pick it up and now transport it out to the peripheral tissues. But when hemoglobin reaches the tissues where the partial pressure is low, we define this in one of our first slides today. Again, it's the arterial, and the tissues are basically down to about 40 millimeters of mercury. Hemoglobin will rapidly release oxygen. This is the 10th state. So it senses again that the ambient partial pressure is low. That's the trigger to say, okay, there's no reason for hemoglobin to hold on to the oxygen. So releases it, makes it available for tissues to consume. So again, the binding of oxygen, the important point, the binding of oxygen to hemoglobin is entirely dependent upon the relative PO2 in that microenvironment. And then the binding of oxygen changes the actual physical conformation of the protein. So the protein goes through these allosteric changes, and that's, again, is entirely dependent upon, again, it's dependent upon the PO2 and the oxygen. But again, the binding of oxygen can change the actual physical conformation. So again, overall, the important thing is one hemoglobin molecule has 4 heme groups, and there's 4 O2s bound to that. So how much oxygen then is bound to hemoglobin in the blood? So we've gone through the dissolve, and again, we know our total oxygen content is dissolved plus hemoglobin. And so now we're going to go through and calculate our oxyhemoglobin content. So what we need to understand is that there's 15 grams of hemoglobin per deciliter of blood. This is a normal physiological value. So 15 grams of hemoglobin per deciliter of blood. And each gram of hemoglobin can carry 1.34 mLs of oxygen. So this is the capacity. This is when hemoglobin is completely full. It carries 1.34 mLs of oxygen per deciliter of blood. So therefore, the amount of oxygen that can be bound to hemoglobin in a deciliter, we say the concentration times the capacity. So we know our concentration is 15, which we said our capacity is 1.34. So we multiply these out, it's 20.1 mLs of oxygen per deciliter of blood. So again, about 20 mLs of oxygen per deciliter of blood. Now what we're going to do is just going to multiply everything by 10, so we're going to come up to 201 mLs of oxygen per liter. So again, we just scaled everything up to a liter. And then for the sake of numbers, I'm just going to round off the 201. We're just going to round that off to 200. We're going to say 200 mLs of oxygen per liter of blood. So what we then see here is for the content for hemoglobin, it's about 200 mLs of oxygen per liter of blood, whereas what we saw for the dissolved, it was about 3 mLs per liter of blood. So again, 200 mLs versus 3 mLs per liter. So now if we go back to our cardiac output to come up with a calculation, so we want to go back to a standard cardiac output of 5 liters per minute. So we say 200 mLs of oxygen per liter of blood times 5 liters per minute. So this is equal to 1,000 mLs of oxygen per minute. So in other words, this is the delivery that's going out to the tissues of oxygen that is on hemoglobin. And so this is, again, and we said we calculated this for dissolved, it was only about 15. In this case, it's now at 1,000. And so we have 1,000 mLs of oxygen per minute going out for delivery to the tissues. And again, I asked the question, how much do we consume? And we said on the last slide, we consume 250 mLs of oxygen per minute. And so if we have 1,000 going out and we're only consuming 250, clearly this is enough to meet our metabolic demand under normal conditions. So again, what this gives a sense then of is the relative amounts of oxygen as far as the content that go out to the tissues. Again, how much of that is bound to hemoglobin versus how much of that is in the dissolved state. So the summary of the key points of knowing that arterial blood gas values is very important. Again, the normal alveolar arterial venous values. Again, understand that the total oxygen is the sum of soluble plus hemoglobin bound. The soluble oxygen is really the product of solubility times pressure. And if you ever want to increase, obviously, your soluble PO2, what you have to do is you put on a higher pressure. We talked about with the alveolar gas equation. If you put someone on 100% O2, you can drive up your delta P. You can increase your soluble content, mainly, again, because we really can't change the solubility. All we're changing is the pressure, and that can drive our content up a little bit. But clearly, hemoglobin provides the vast majority for our metabolic needs. What's important about is hemoglobin. It changes physical structure as a function of oxygen tension. And then again, each gram of hemoglobin can carry up to 1.34 mLs of oxygen when fully saturated.